Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and thought I would sit down and do a video for you guys and gals. Let me get a sip of my water first. My radio voice going. Still early in the day, I haven't eaten as much, so I'm not all veiny yet, but let's get over and talk about that. Let's talk about fat loss. This is something I've said before, and I've made some videos pointing out, look, yes, I have some loose skin because I've lost over 100 pounds of body fat. I'm also almost 50 years old. I have a lot of experience in this. I keep up with all the evidence. And here's a trick that I find is extremely helpful for overeaters who are trying to lean out. And what I want people to think about when I say this, think about the evidence and the way people have analyzed it. The people who've been critical of the protein overfeeding studies have said, well, the reason those protein overfeeding studies, they all lost body fat is because the satiety was so high and they probably ate less calories than the other groups. Keeping in mind the protein overfeeding studies were stuff like 3.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that means for someone like me, 350 plus grams of protein. You know, they pointed out, well, they're muscle preserving. Yes, there's a thermic effect, but it's probably very appetite suppressing while still being very anabolic to muscle tissue. And there is the caveat that they're missing with it. That means, keeping in mind, those studies found that most of the people in the protein overfeeding studies who were lifters already gained muscle and lost fat concurrently, while supposedly in a surplus. Now, again, people have pointed out, well, maybe they weren't really in the surplus, and maybe they weren't eating the calories they thought, which kind of brings me to my point with this. Okay, and I have found in the past that some fasting can be useful for fat loss as a calorie control mechanism. Here's one of the things that I'm going to suggest for a lot of people who struggle with appetite and they want to be more free with what they eat. They don't want to eat as strict as a lot of us choose to eat. They don't want to eat clean all the time or 99% of the time. I get an occasional cheat meal. They're not even always a weekly thing. So most people don't want to do that. So one of the things that I would suggest is fasting in the morning and combining that by breaking your fast with an enormous amount of protein, even in the form of shakes. And I don't care what you use. It could be whey, it could be soy, okay? It almost doesn't matter, right? You can go that route, you can go the plant-based route. You can find something that works if you're lactose intolerant. But here is the kicker. Fasting itself can be useful for diet adherence, but a lot of people, the only people who struggle with fasting are the ones who say what? Well, I end up just overeating in the evening anyways. And for those people, fasting doesn't work. So I want to be clear when people say, well, how come one person does amazingly well with some fasting and other people don't? Well, because it purely helps you control calories. That's it. And anyone who's telling you it does a lot more than that and all these other things, they're throwing nonsense at you. It is a tool for helping with calorie control. Okay. We also have these studies showing that extremely high amounts of protein, even 100 grams in one sitting, are not a problem. They purely extend the protein synthesis window, the muscle protein synthesis window. Okay. This has been documented in very recent studies. Here's what I'm going to suggest to you. If you look at that data on fasting, you look at that data on large protein feedings, and you look at the data on total protein overfeeding and the recomposition. See where we're about to go with this? Break your fast with an enormous protein shake. Now, people say, how much? Well, let's just say you really want to protein overfeed. 70 to 100 grams of protein in a shake. Okay. And at that point, if you need to mix other stuff, if you happen to believe in and take creatine, mix some creatine in there. Hey, great. If you're big on believing you need magnesium, okay, it's a good place to mix your magnesium in. But the main thing is making sure that you get an enormous amount of protein when you break your fast. And I don't care whether you're doing a 6-hour feed window, an 8-hour, largely irrelevant in this regard. Okay. I like 6 to 8. I'm doing 8 right now. I have an 8-hour feed window. I usually start at around, say, 10 p.m., but I don't eat a meal until later. So for me at the moment, what I'm doing with it, and again, one thing that'll help me lean out with my enormous appetite, but I have an enormous energy turnover. Around 10 in the morning, after I'm done training or whatever I'm going to do, if I'm doing a little bit of cardio on a non-lifting day, so sleds or something, like I did yesterday. Afterwards, you get to around 10 a.m., a couple hours before your first real meal for me, a massive protein shake. And again, I'm talking up to 100 grams of protein in one sitting. And then you get a lot of people who are like, well, that's going to just crush my appetite. And make sure you get one that your stomach can tolerate, by the way. Again, be selective. Eating a bunch of protein right there at the start of your feed window. You're already going to ensure that your protein numbers are going to be much higher, no matter what else you eat through the day, especially if you focus on protein or whatever afterwards. But even if you don't, and this works even for the plant-based people and the vegans and other stuff, because you can have 100 grams of soy or pea protein right there for your very first meal, place of a meal, after you fasted. See where we're going. So you're going to have much, much better calorie control. You're going to ensure your protein intake is much higher. So if you end up being in a deficit, you end up being better off. Because again, notice those protein overfeeding. So this makes protein overfeeding way easier, by the way. If you're trying to hit that 300 or 400 grams or something, if you're using that approach for body recomposition, right? But you're ensuring you're getting a higher quality protein right at the start. You're ensuring your muscle protein synthesis is going to be elevated for a very long period of time, irrespective of what you do with the rest of it. You're ensuring that your appetite and your calorie control is going to be tighter because you've already fasted through the morning, given yourself a smaller feed window, and then you did an enormous amount of protein right at the start. And it's okay, shakes are faster absorbing, but that's possibly a good thing if you've been fasting. That's not a bad thing. Don't look at that as a negative. Right? This puts you in a great environment for shifting body composition. And again, I am not telling people that you can violate calories in or calories out. What I am telling you is this sort of approach will give you much better control of your calorie intake, better control of your appetite, and creating a more favorable anabolic environment with your overall macros, because you're ensuring you're going to have a very high protein intake. Even if you goof off the rest of the day, you have occasional day where you don't do it right and you're not eating all your other protein sources as much. You've ensured by getting that large amount, particularly if it's like 100 grams, you've ensured you're going to have good protein numbers for the day no matter what else you do. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.